You know what I find incredibly interesting now, being that it's 2025, that there are thousands of options for people to get fit now. There's stuff online, there's stuff in person, there's free stuff on YouTube. And what's really puzzling to me, not only as a 30-year industry veteran, but also as a fitness professional, is how come there are more people than ever now that are fatter, that are overweight, and that aren't physically active? It just really, it blows my mind.
Yeah, it does. I've thought about this when we were talking in our kind of production meeting about this. It really resonated with me that we're in a really strange time. I feel
Yeah,
like there's never been more opportunities to have access, if you will, to even free options, like you said, YouTube
absolutely.
videos.
Yeah.
What do you think is the issue? Or let's brainstorm some reasons why this is. I think there's maybe some things people may
Yeah.
think social media and stuff, but let's go beyond those kind of normal things.
Honestly, I think right now, I think one of the biggest hindrances to people being active and sticking with it is there's too much information out there. I really do. I think we live in an information age. I mean, think about it. You can Google anything you want today. You can just ask Google any question and you'll get thousands of responses. And I think that's part of the problem today. I really do.
That's definitely a different angle. I think that almost people are paralyzed by the amount of information. I almost think about it. I hadn't thought about it like this, but I think about the example of someone goes to a restaurant, and let's say the restaurant, the menu has like 10 pages
Yeah.
of things you can order. What do people always do when there's too many items to order? They always default to the thing they like the most all the
Either
time.
that or they ask the server, what do you recommend?
Right, right. And we almost have too many. It sounds weird to say too many options.
We do. But I think you're exactly right. People feel like, well, honestly, I don't know what to do, and I really think today people who struggle know they struggle. But I also think that they've almost resolved that this is just the way that I am too. And I think that's part of it. I think some of it is just the mixed messages and psychology, and especially with the media too, that I think some people just believe this is who they are.
Mm. Can you talk a little bit more about the mixed messaging? And
Yeah.
I would like to let's dive a little bit deeper onto that. What elaborate on that?
Well, I'll just give you a little perspective here. I remember back when I first started in the industry, the focus was always on being pencil thin. It was always about, and I remember vividly when I was a grad student, there was a magazine that I saw in some office that I was in, and Cindy Crawford was on the front. And she was in a bathing suit. I must have been the Sports Illustrated bathing suit edition. And she was on a beach and all of that. And that was the focus. That was what people equated with being fit was I'm going to be pencil thin and I'm going to look like a supermodel. And I feel like that's still a big message today, depending on what you follow and what you read. But also, there's this section in media messaging where it's okay if you're overweight. It's not your fault. It's okay if you're never going to be a size 6, and that's okay. Love your body exactly the way that it is. So I feel like there's these mixed messages that some people hear, and they think, I want the best plan that's going to work for me.
Yeah, I was actually talking to one of my students about this, that there's this kind of the fitness culture. Not necessarily, I mean, obviously, there's a part of it with professionals like us in the larger scheme, but just how fitness is presented in larger culture is very confusing to the consumer.
Yeah.
And it
Yeah.
sounds like you're talking about that a little on some level, on some version of that.
Yeah, there's that, and then there's this message that people see where they see people who maybe walk every day because it's what they love, but they don't lift weights because they say that's not my thing. Or you've got they know somebody who runs every single day and that's what they do, but they don't do anything else. So I also think that some people think they look around and they see what people they know are doing and they say, "Well, I can't do that, so I must not be able to do anything." I think there's some of that too.
What do you think that comes from?
I think it's just it's a matter for people who think that. I think it's a matter of people who have not been exposed to enough things. I mean, they haven't had either a good role model, they haven't had an opportunity to do something, and at the same time, had something customized that, you know what? If all you want to do right now is walk, that's totally okay. But at some point, maybe you'll be open to doing something else too. I think it's a very much, a lot of it is an all or nothing mindset. I'm either going to do this or I'm not going to do anything.
You know what? That's actually really on time because I think that's a lot of the hesitancy with even getting started with changing your lifestyle is I have to just do all these things really well. Or I have to have a gym membership. I have to like work out for hours and hours and hours. And it feels daunting to
Yeah,
people. And then
it
it's like you
does.
said, well, who's telling them this? Where are they getting this idea from? You know?
Yeah. But there are a lot of people out there that believe that, even in 2025, that if you don't go to the gym 6 days a week or 7 days a week, and if you don't fix your meals in all those little containers and keep them like readily available, and you don't have the 3 hour morning routine, and you don't drink, how many ounces of water that you need, or if you're not doing all those things, then you're not going to be fit. So there is an all or nothing mindset with a lot of people. I've worked with plenty of those clients in my career, and my message is always the same: is you have to do what works for you. And if for any something that you think there's just one way, there's an infinite number of ways that it can look, but you have to be open to that possibility.
So let's talk. Well, two questions behind that. Why have we failed at that message still? And how do we change that message moving forward?
Oh boy, that's a good one. I think there's a good part of why we failed at that message is that there's a lot of this mentality that we have to be everything to everybody.
Mm,
And a lot that goes back to the everyone gets a trophy mentality. I mean, I hate to put it like that, but I feel like there's still this piece where we want to appeal to everybody. And I can tell you, and you can probably, attest to this too. For as long as I've been in the industry, I've been an entrepreneur 27 of those years. And I could tell you that my skill set does not line up best to work with everybody. And I think when we try to do everything for everybody, we're really not helping anybody.
mm.
I think we have to know what we do best. And I think we have to be prepared to stand and die on that hill, right? And just say, this is important and this is why it's important. So, to your point, I think it really comes to us owning what we believe and being very confident about that and being able to go out and talk to as many people that will listen about it. The truth is human beings are human behavior is very complex, and human beings are not machines. I mean, what works for you is not going to necessarily work for me. It's not going to necessarily work for the next person.
Yeah, you know what? That it made me think about you're not for everyone, right? Not every client is good for you, and vice versa. And I think we haven't done a good job of making that message clear to our colleagues. And
Yeah.
I think we haven't, and being honest with ourselves, like what's our reservoir for working with people? Like how many hours, what our compatibility with people. I just think we haven't been pretty honest with ourselves. But also, I think too, the industry is hard to be in, especially in the
Yeah.
beginning. So
Totally.
you end up taking on people that maybe there's not a great compatibility match with each other. It's-
Well, and to your point, I also feel like when you look at how the industry's evolved, I mean, like when I started, there was no online space. There was no social media. If you had a website, you were like the cool thing in town because it was like the new thing, right? My first job out of school was working for a chain of health clubs. And that was the primary place that you would go if you wanted to get fit. But you and I both know today that that's not the route that a lot of people are going. I mean, boutique fitness now is hotter than it's ever been. I mean, there are new concepts that are opening on every block in every city across the United States today and across the world. And because that's happening, just should tell you right then and there that there are a number of different things that can work for people. And I just think that what we have to understand with people who have really struggled with being active and staying consistent with it is that we have to embrace this love of the basics. It might not be like in neon lights and it might not be the Cindy Crawford routine or whatever, like I was talking about, but we call it the basics because they work.
Yeah, I am hugely on board with that. And it's just so funny. It's like we're sharing a brain about this because I was literally just telling some students and some of my clients, I'm like, listen, I think we overcomplicate this fitness thing with a lot of people.
Yeah.
We don't allow people to be comfortable with mastering the basics of this. I literally said that, the
Yeah.
basics. Instead, like a lot of human behavior, instead of the obvious simple answer, we create very complex answers
Yeah.
that people have no business actually even entertaining if they
Yeah.
skip building the foundation of their home.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes the foundation is where you stay for a long time. Because some people, I have a woman that I've been working with for close to 15 years. I go to her home 3 mornings a week. She's got a lot of health considerations. And what her foundation has stayed the same for several months. But it works because she knows it. She feels good about it. She can keep doing it. And it works for us. And so by me sticking to that same thing, she shows up and she stays consistent, and that's a win. That's really the main thing that she wants. And that's what we have to keep in mind.
I think you're hitting the nail right on the head. And for our colleagues, I think this is one of the greatest lessons
Yeah.
because often as fitness pros, we want for other people what we want for ourselves a
Yeah.
lot. And we think, and let's say you're a fitness pro that's really into peak performance. The mistake is that your clients want peak performance all the time.
Yeah.
A lot of them do want just the foundation. They just want movement accountability. You show up regularly. Let's be consistent. Most of the people are not shooting for this very large goal or to make this, massive fitness goal. It's like, can you
Yeah.
help me do this regularly? Just like,
Yeah. And then what happens when we get overwhelmed? We quit.
yeah, that's right.
We get over anxious. We start skipping sessions and we miss a week, we miss 2 weeks, and then we're like, you know what? I'm just going to drop out. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, this is what we see like in the early part of the new year. In January, everyone gets all excited. And then in February, they're all done.
Yeah. So what do we do? Like, in one hand, the options are really good with all these options we have out here, and that people have different ways of
Yeah.
being involved in health, fitness, and well being. But on the other hand, it feels like too much.
Yeah.
How do we balance that?
Well, one of the things that I always tell my clients, and really anybody who will listen, so I'll do it here too, is that let's start with one thing. Let's start with one thing and let's just zero in on that one thing and let's be very consistent and let's just own it. Let's make it work for us. Let's just make it part of who we are before you add anything else. Because to your point, we do overcomplicate things. Our brain never wants to do anything different. We always want to resort to doing the same thing. And that goes with the fact that if we haven't been successful, our brain will always remind us of that too. So I always tell people, let's start with one thing and let's just keep doing it and let's get really good at it. And then we can add something else.
Let's take a journey backwards here and forwards, and especially because I like to highlight. I love people like yourself who have been in the business a really long time. One, because it's really hard to do.
Yeah.
So it's a massive success that people like yourself and myself have been in it for such a long time. So, two questions. What do you like the most that has changed in your journey in
Mm.
this 30 years plus? And what do you like the least that has
Oh,
changed?
wow.
Sure.
Gosh, you have to hit me with a big gotcha question, don't you?
Yeah, yeah. I'm a big question guy. I love to give big questions.
I love it. I love it. Honestly, I think one of the things that I love the most, ironically, about the industry is that there are so many ways that you can get fit. I really love that. As complicated as it can be for people, as a fitness professional, it's one of the things that I love the most about what I do because literally every person that I talk to that comes to me for fitness advice might get a completely different answer. There's going to be some basic stuff in there, but there's also going to be some level of customization, I like to call it, something that's individual and personalized for them. As far as what I like the least about the industry now, technology is going to be our downfall, I believe. I believe it really takes away a lot of the personal touch. One of the reasons I got into this industry, probably like you, is that I loved being face to face with people. I love feeling that personal interaction. It's one of the reasons why I teach, why I really believe in-person experiences are so impactful. And, that can be a one-on-one session, it can be a group, it can be a retreat, it can be any number of things. But I really feel like the complexity of where technology and everything has gone today can be our downfall if we allow that to happen.
Can you talk more about that complexity? I'm curious about what you mean by that.
Well, I just mean when you look at, let's just say if you're a fitness pro who's listening and you're trying to devise a way that you can have a working virtual component for your business for the future. Because personally, I believe as we move into the future, if you don't have a way to serve your clients in person and online, I don't know that you're necessarily going to be successful for the future. I think you need to do both. And that's also a hill I will die on. But but as far as the complexity goes, I feel like there's so many technology platforms now. There's so many options as far as, for how you want to package and sell your service. I feel like if you're not in it for the long game, I feel like that alone can frustrate you. And you could say, you know what? I'm just not going to do anything online. I'm just going to do all in person. And I really hate that because for as much as technology offers us, it can also be a major inconvenience too.
Yeah, I feel like humans have a really strange relationship with technology. This is
Yeah.
like more of a larger existential conversation
Yep.
that we struggle with the creation of technologies that may eventually surpass our own intellect. And
Yeah.
in many ways has in terms of combing through information, the ability to synthesize like
Yep.
1,000 papers in seconds.
Totally.
There's
Totally.
and I think also the problem is that we don't necessarily think if this is a good idea or not.
Mm.
We don't even
So
start to
feel
think
like
about that.
agree, but I also think to your point, technology can be a downfall because we can get very easily addicted to it. I mean, think about it. People are always on their I mean, I was in the airport flying home from going to Dallas and coming home from Dallas this past weekend. Can I tell you how many people were sitting in a close area on their phones
Yeah.
constantly? And it takes away that human interaction, the ability to have a conversation, the ability to be able to ask someone a question that could potentially lead to something that could really be a game changer for you. We didn't have any of that when we started. So it's like we got on the phone and we had to actually talk to people. That was actually how I built my business. I make 10
Yeah.
phone calls every day
Yeah.
to people. And
Yeah.
you get used to having conversations. And that's one downfall that technology takes away from us, I think.
Yeah, I'm in a big agreement with that. And in the same vein, I travel a decent amount myself for business and stuff. And I think if you just pay attention, you see that in every airport,
Yeah.
literally on
Everywhere.
every plane. It's literally taken over people's, it's like almost this weird hive mentality.
Yeah.
And it's actually kind of strange because like you, I remember a time when that wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
It's like we're afraid of boredom. We're afraid to be
Yeah, and
bored.
I also think that
Dude,
there's this fear, and this probably goes back to when we first started our conversation. I feel like there's a fear of missing out. There's a fear of being left out. There's a fear we're so conditioned to finding things out quickly to so
mm,
that and that also contributes to why so many people struggle, I think, with staying consistent is they expect overnight results.
yeah.
And you and I both know that's not going to happen, not even to the best people.
Not even to I wanna get on to that. That's an interesting topic too, is kind of managing those expectations
Yep.
in a society where that's run pretty rampant, out of
Mhm.
control.
It's everywhere.
Is right? It's like, "Hey, listen, you may be spending a good chunk of your time just providing neuromuscular facilitation for a really long time, coordination, just understand getting your body to move in ways you're not even used to moving." And but everybody wants to look amazing very quickly. You know how much
Well,
work that takes? Like,
it's like, but I mean, but think about it. I mean, to your point, look at the most successful athletes that we know
yeah,
and people that you know and people listening to their clients who've been successful with their programs. you don't just get up one day and go do a workout and you look the way you want to look.
Oh,
Right? It's like a colleague of mine has a saying, your habits are reflected in the way you look and
mm,
the way you present in your life, right? So you dial in the habits, which again, these are the basics. This isn't new information. This isn't earth shattering, right? It's like the basics are pretty well known,
yes,
but you dial that in, and you know what? Over time, the result is the product of what those habits will do.
that's right. It's exactly right. So, as we enter this next phase of your time in this business, my time, where are we headed? If we have the same result over all this time, is there hope for a different result in the next 30 years?
I can, you know what? I'm an eternal optimist. I really, as much as I talk about being real and this is really what's happening and all that, in my heart of hearts, I am an eternal optimist. I believe that everybody wants to succeed. I believe that everybody wants to achieve their goals. I believe that everybody wants to feel good because we're born, with this amazing human body you know, uh, that's capable of achieving amazing things. If you think about it, you think about how resilient we are and what we're able to fight and battle, and we can really seriously get hurt and we can still get better. There's no other species on the planet that can do that. So, so as far as the future goes, I am eternally optimistic, and I will remain that way with everything that's available that we can make a difference for people. Then that, and like I said, that is another hill that I will die on. So I've got lots of hills. but
Well,
but I just think that you just never know what day for some people is going to be the day. You don't know what piece of content or what activity or what option is finally going to turn the light bulb on for people, and I will keep doing that until the day that I'm no longer here.
yeah, it's an interesting thought, because this will obviously keep going on past our
Yeah.
time living.
Yeah.
And I always wonder what it will be like because to the technology conversation, it's only going to become more powerful,
Yeah.
more complex, more merging with our lives. I
Yeah.
wonder how we merge with that to actually solve some of these problems of inactivity that are at its highest that it's ever been.
Yeah. But I also think too that there is going to come a day of reckoning where our healthcare
Mm,
system is no longer going to be able to support this. And I feel like there's going to come a day where the people that are really overweight, that really struggle, I feel like the bill is gonna come due someday for those people, and the light bulb is gonna go on, and they're not gonna be able to sustain that lifestyle anymore, unfortunately. And because, my grandfather used to say the pocketbook nerve is the most sensitive one,
mm,
and I really think that for some people, that's what it's gonna take,
yeah,
you know?
interesting. That's an interesting take on that. What do you I know this is very we don't know the answers to all this stuff. We're just saying, we're postulating, but what do you think would cause that to happen? Like that reckoning. What would be the kind of the summation of things that happen? Is it a financial aspect? Is it a societal norms changing? What do you see?
Think it's both, and I think we're already starting to see evidence of that. I mean, it doesn't take a genius to figure out that there's so many people that can't pay their healthcare premiums because of their health status. People who are really overweight, who have a number of different risk factors like smoking and all of that, their healthcare premiums eventually are gonna be so high that not on that even public assistance isn't really gonna be able to help them. Um, but I also think that, we're gonna reach a point where, the rubber's gonna meet the road. That and like I said, that's the eternal optimist in me, that people will wake up and say, "I don't wanna live like this anymore."
Mm,
And it takes a combined effort from not just fitness professionals, but educators and leaders in the community and, pivotal people that are in these people's lives. It's
yeah.
gonna take a combined, like, message that, this is not how we're gonna live anymore. We're better than this.
Yeah. I actually am very in line with this. And I think there's a historical discussion for this on some sense. Because if I think about my grandparents and people like there just really wasn't a lot of information about this. And it really wasn't ever
Yep.
discussed as a
There was very little out there about
yeah, yeah,
what was the first report that came out about smoking? It didn't really come out
I'm
until the sev
exactly
like, it's always been out there, but it really wasn't public. That first report that the
right.
CDC put out changed a lot of that.
I
Right.
agree with that. And there's also, I think, even if you just, while we do have a very serious problem with obesity and overweight, I have never seen more people who are older look better also
Yes.
and
Yes.
have defied the norms of what it used to look
Yes.
like.
People
Um,
are living longer than they ever have.
right. And both and in a weird way too, because both our medical technology is also keeping very sick people alive much longer, but also people who are taking care of themselves in a larger holistic fashion are looking better, feeling better way later
Yeah.
into their
You know, I
lives.
think
There's
our
hope in
healthcare
there.
system today, you bring up a really good point. My dad's a retired physician, and I feel like the healthcare system today is set up for prolonging life,
Yes.
right? It's not set up to prevent for prevention. And I do think it's my prediction. I feel like in my adult life, I feel like we are going to see somewhat of a shift. At least I can hope that. We're already seeing some evidence in as far as public policy goes. Airlines are going to require people to buy 2 tickets if you get to a certain weight. That will probably end up in the courts, but I do think at some point that airlines are going to say, "Look, this is a reality. This isn't, discrimination. This is a reality." And I think we're going to see that in other places where, you have to make a seat larger to accommodate somebody. There's going to be a cost with that. So again, it is going to have to come back economically somehow.
Yeah, I think the financial costs, when it becomes very personal to people, uh, often creates a behavior change. It's
Yeah.
also similar. I was having this conversation too, and I kind of hate that this is part of the conversation, but pain also is a strange motivator for humans too over time.
Mhm.
Like if the pain is severe enough, I'm not wishing this for anybody. I just think that when a lot of our biggest changes societally have come from lots of pain.
Yep.
And I think that you're hitting on something with the healthcare. I believe like a potential collapse of the healthcare system is imminent within the next 20, 30 years, especially as we see our boomer population will peak at 2032. We're keeping people, again, prolonging life, but taking care of elderly folks, it's very difficult to do, especially when they're in home care
Yep.
and the financial responsibility. People are having to stop working to take care of their loved ones.
Yep.
This financial collapse for healthcare, I think, is one of our biggest issues going to be moving forward.
I think so too. But I also think that with any huge challenge, there's always tremendous opportunity.
Yes. Yes.
I feel like some of the biggest challenges that business and society has faced has resulted in tremendous opportunities because that's always an opportunity for growth, for a new idea. And I'm here for it.
Yeah. Innovation is almost is always really incredible during weird times in many
Yeah.
ways. Just like because you're forced to come up with alternatives
Yeah.
and other
I mean, look
ways.
at what Steve Jobs did with the iPhone.
Right.
It's like, and he didn't say, "Hey, I've got a brand new phone here." What did he position? This is the best way to connect with people.
Yeah.
And who would have thought that it was a game changer? And maybe there'll be something in the healthcare system that will do that. I don't know.
It would be amazing. I've done a big history of fitness technologies presentation before, and I said, well, I think future humans will always look back to June 7th, 2007, the day the first iPhone came out,
Yeah.
as a very large change in human history. In many ways, the invention of the technological revolution,
Yeah.
for good or for better or for worse, it
Yep.
will be a turning point in humanity's existence.
Yeah. Well, you could go back and look at when YouTube first came on the scene, and when Zoom had a big boom, right, right when the pandemic hit. It's
Mhm.
like you look at them, and there was like literally crises going on at the same time. And
Right.
look at what came out,
Yeah.
right?
And fitness in many ways has been an interesting partner to technology from TV to DVDs, VHS, and
Yep.
think of how quickly fitness has cycled through all these technologies now in streaming. And I'm
Totally.
always fascinated, where is it going? It's so
I
amazing
oh,
quick
I
it's
can
going.
remember in the 1980s doing Jane Fonda tapes to get my group fitness certification. It was like, because that's what we did. That's what we
Yeah.
knew. And it's like, and now it's like, there's just thousands of ways that you can access that.
I mean, it's just I think that library will continue to grow,
Yeah.
and and our industry is really an interesting place, um, kind of an experimental melting pot of ways to leverage large societies' technological innovation
And
for
it'll be
them.
really interesting to see in 10 years who's still standing too.
Mm.
Yeah. My prediction in the next 5 to 10 years is that the what I like to call the big box gyms, they're not gonna be the preferred place to go anymore for a lot of
Oh my
people.
gosh, I want you to talk more about that. Tell me a little bit about the genesis of that prediction.
Because I really feel like people are looking for different experiences. People want something different. They don't want to go to a big Planet Fitness. No offense to Planet Fitness. There's a
Right,
place for that, right?
right.
But I feel like for a lot of people, it's just not gonna work. It's not a viable option. And, we've sort of seen evidence of this in as far as in economics. When we see gyms doing $10 a month memberships, they're trying to appeal to everybody, and we know that doesn't work over the long term. So, I just feel like with all the options now that we're seeing, it's really a matter of time. We
Well,
have a ch we have a chain of health clubs here in town, that has several locations, and they're even going to more of a boutique concept. They're actually changing their name to reflect this. I just really think that this is what's gonna happen. I don't know what it's gonna look like, but I can
yeah,
feel it.
I have not heard this take before, and I'm here for it big time. I just think I love this. Well, I think there's a lot of wisdom too when you've been in the business a long time and you've seen the trajectory
Yeah,
of where things have gone. I also think too, like, if you really think about it, our industry is still in its infancy. The modern version of formalized fitness is
absolutely.
so new and
Yeah,
it's super new. I don't think we think about that enough. It's
I
still
I
really, it's like a baby, you know?
well, it's really only been since the pandemic that a lot of these options have been around,
Yeah.
because that's when the virtual route was already growing, like, what,
Yes.
10 years or so ago when I first went on? But it was before that, but it was really right around the start of 2020 when everything just blew up.
Yeah.
So, we've really only had 4 or 5 years to kind of see, and we're already seeing things come and go as a result.
Yeah.
Um,
And even a lot of the more formalized, like third party accreditation organizations really became online in the 90s.
yeah,
And the profession in general really started in that era. The 80s was
totally.
less formalized. It was definitely much more known for more of a bodybuilding based industry, aerobics based
Mhm,
industry, but the formalization of what we do, I mean, we're a very tiny amount of time into this
yeah,
thing. So
totally.
it's kind of
Totally.
weird. We kind of don't know. It's
I know I can remember as a student, you could probably remember too, going to these professional conferences and going to the poster presentations,
yeah, yeah,
going and picking the talks that, like, most aligned with what you were interested in, and that was, like, the way to get educated then. That was like you came home from something like that and you felt like, "I've got all these new things that I learned," and you look at where we are now, it's like almost don't even hear about the professional organizations meetings as much because there's so many other different, events where professionals are getting together and saying, "Hey, this is what works,"
I I
So
have a big take on this part, especially, and I've been very critical of this. And I know a lot of people that throw conferences and stuff. And I said, "Oh, the conference industry has to change
Yep.
because a lot of people are not go. It's too cost prohibitive for people to go.
Yep.
And two, what are you offering there educationally that you can't get somewhere else already?
Exactly.
Because that used to be when there wasn't this technology. That's the only way you could meet your colleagues back in the day
Totally.
and get
Yep.
this education. There's so many other options. It's like that space is changing and literally, I think, has to change pretty dramatically
Yeah.
to keep
Totally.
the times.
Yeah, I really feel like there's what we're seeing, here's another prediction. I also think in the next 5 to 10 years, you're gonna see a lot more of these boutique type events popping up.
Mm.
because it's a lot more attractive for people to go and be in a room with, say, 100 people or 200 people versus 5,000 people. I think when people hear that, they think like a Tony Robbins event.
Yeah.
You can imagine what it takes to put something like that on, and it's really the same thing every year,
Yeah, that's
you
right.
know? So you think of going to like these smaller boutique type events, not only do you get to learn cutting edge things that people are actually doing, this isn't just an idea that's being tested in a lab. These are things that people are actually doing, but you get to meet and talk to other people who are in the same boat as you.
Yeah.
To me, that's much more impactful when I get home than just sitting in a room looking at a bunch of slides. I'll still like doing that, but
Yeah.
that doesn't always like change who you are and how you do your work, you know?
Yeah. We're in the prediction business right now, everyone.
I'm here for it because
Yeah.
I'm all for it. I feel like, I think back to when I first started and you're so sure that this is how everything is going to be,
Yeah.
you know? And like the gym that I worked for around here when I first got out of school is no longer in business,
Yeah.
you know? So I just think it's a microcosm of what we're going to be seeing more of,
Yeah,
in the
I
future.
think you're right. I think you're right. It's gosh, it's exciting and a little nerve-wracking somewhat. I think especially thinking about how do we help change the trajectory of, the statistics that we all pretty much know at this point about. And but I am like you. I think there's optimism, there's hope, and I see it especially in a lot of young people that I work with and students. They're much more health conscious than we ever were growing up. Like they see it,
Absolutely. And totally agree
they're
with that.
they understand it. They're like, yeah, I want to like have a better well-being, overall well-being. They're not just looking at it in just the physical sense. They have much more elevated sense of being alive in many ways.
Well, you go to college campuses. Let's start there. You go to college campuses now, and they all have like these incredible salad bars.
Hmm.
They have like healthier food options. I don't know about you, but when I went to college, it wasn't like that.
Yeah, no.
And this
No.
is why they say the freshman 15, right?
Yeah.
Which I did gain the freshman 15, I'll just be honest. But there's so many, again, there so much more is available because society has changed that.
Yeah.
And this is what people want. And what do we look for? We look for what the consumer trends and what's working in other areas, and we borrow that. And the fitness
Yeah.
industry is
Yeah.
doing that now.
I would say, and most of my students are they're super motivated for mental well-being. Like this is a
Okay.
huge part of their life. They want to be mentally and emotionally have good regulation of that. They want more out of life, which is
Yeah,
I love that they
I
want a
know.
much richer, fuller life. And health and well-being is a major part of that for them. It's a major, which certainly was not in my time growing up for a lot of people.
Yeah,
So I see that as hope
I
that
do
they're
too.
going to be in positions of leadership and this is going to be normal behavior for them.
Yeah.
Whereas a
Well,
lot of kids,
my husband's in construction, and when you look at a lot of these new buildings being built, you know what's going in a lot of them? Small gyms,
yeah,
because that's what people want. And that's a good thing because for years, that was not the case,
yeah,
you know?
yeah, most definitely. So if you look at kind of these kernels of things, you're like, okay, these younger folks, they've just been alive in a time where this has just been much more apparent to them. And the information is very overwhelming now too, how critically important. And they also know things like that exercise may be one of the most potent forms or interventions for changing your life on a large scale. Whereas, if I think about my grandma, if I could tell this real quick, I remember my grandma, wonderful lady, but I remember her telling me we were sitting outside a restaurant one time and she's like, Darian, you just, when you get older, you just get old and things fall apart. You can't do anything about it. And I remember I love my grandma and I told her, I said, that's not true, grandma. I was in college and I said, I'm learning that that doesn't have to be the case. She said, no,
Yeah.
that's just what happens. And I never forget that. But she never had access to understand that. She
Yeah.
didn't see. And she was almost a prisoner of her time too.
Totally.
No one else
Totally.
was ever talking to her about this
Yeah.
either.
I totally can resonate with that. My mom, her parents both drank and smoked heavily growing up. And there was not really a lot of talk about working out and being healthy and all that. And it's like, and my folks, I still have both my folks. They're in their 80s. and they both go to the Y. They have a trainer, they work out. My dad still runs. It's like, you know, none of that was talked about when they were growing up either. And it's like, that's part of the reason I know why I do what I do. It's because of the upbringing that I had.
Yeah. And I think I would like to see more of that. And I think we will. I think
Yeah.
a lot of these folks growing up now, they're gonna have children and be guardians of people, and they're gonna promote this to their people and say,
Yeah.
you don't have to wither away. That was kind of the whole thing. You just wither away. I just never accepted that either. I just thought there's
Yeah.
something
Me
out
neither.
here. I just never thought that was a thing. And as I learned about it in college, I was like, wait a minute. Like,
Yeah.
what's going on out there? Oh, they're not
Yeah.
getting this. They don't see this that I'm
Yeah.
seeing or that.
Well, but think about it too. Like for a long time, women were told not to lift weights.
That's true. I remember
And
that
there's still
time.
women out there that believe if they lift weights, they're going to look like a man.
Yeah.
I teach at the college. I'm just an adjunct professor at a women's
Mhm.
college here in Raleigh where I live. And a lot of my students, the first day of class, that's a concern for them. And I just have to, then you have to think, okay, it's 2025. Why do people still think that? But the reality is there's still people out there that believe it
Yeah.
and they're still talking about it, you know?
Mm.
So,
Oh,
so we just have to keep leading by example and saying it's not a one size fits all. You don't have to do 50, 11 things to see the change that you want. Let's start with the one thing and let's just keep doing it, you know?
exactly right. Allison, this is a beautiful conversation.
Super
Seriously.
fun. Thank you so
Yeah.
much. Yeah.
Yeah, between 2 that's what I would appeal to me too is, a conversation between 2 longtime people in our industry, and, I just love talking to seasoned people in our industry. You have to have a lot of fortitude, strength, determination to be in this business a long time.
That's
So,
right. I
huge
completely agree.
respect, huge
Thank you.
respect for you.
Same for you too. Thanks for what you
Awesome.
do.
Thank you. And I would love for people to just learn more about you. We'll have the show notes, but anything you want to share about how people can connect with you to learn more about your
Certainly.
vision?
You can go to my website. That address is www.thealisonk.com. That's Allison with one L. And you go to my website, we actually have a free gift for any of your listeners that would like it. It's what I call the ultimate 12-minute workout. It is like an easy 5, 6 exercise thing that anyone can do to work into your day. You can get it there or you can find the link too in the show notes as well. And that's my free gift for you. So
Wonderful. Thank you, Allison.
yeah.
I appreciate you.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks a lot.